Autobiography is the tale of an angsty teenager who has so much angst that he spends all semester writing a self-insert fanfiction about himself and the cute older guy that he has a crush on. And then he turns it in for a grade. Oh my god. When the main character, Tanner, is my age, that's gonna be one of the things that keeps him up at night. Like when I can't sleep, I'm just like, oh my god, remember that time when I was in 8th grade and I got my period in math class and it just bled all over the seat? Looked like a murder scene. And I just got up and left it there. Gonna be like that, but Tanner, for you, it will be so much worse. What is up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy, and today we're gonna be wrapping up Pride Month by talking about the best and the worst books for bisexual representation. And by best and the worst, I mean we're actually gonna count down from like the book I consider the worst to the book I consider the best. So really it's gonna be like the worst books and the best books, and also the books that are kind of neutral, and then also the books that like did an okay job but could have done better. But if I had titled this video books that are the best and also the worst, and some that are neutral and some that did a decent job but could have done better, then this video would not have gotten as many clicks because I like to be dramatic. So now instead you can get invested in this video by watching me complain about things, and then at the end of the video you'll leave with some very good book recommendations. So we're going to start with the worst and count our way up to the best. Starting off, our worst book for bisexual representation this Pride Month is Ship It! This book sucks. I have done a review already on this book, so you can check out my review. It'll be up in the cards. The main problem with this book was that it treats queer nerd girls like we're absolutely off the wall, insane, psychotic, and like it's supposed to be like, you know, told from a queer nerd girl perspective and like in favor of that type of life, but in reality, Claire and Tess, they do some pretty terrible things, and it's like cringy to watch. But that's not here nor there. We're not talking about the plot of the book itself. Let's talk about the representation. So on the surface, the representation seems pretty awesome, right? We've got Claire, who is, you know, part of the LGBT community in some way. She learns that she's not straight over the course of the novel. And we have Tess, the girl she ends up dating, who is a homoromantic pansexual, which is wonderful. I am so happy that she's been able to figure out her identity at such a young age and has been able to, you know, be so confident in who she is. That's amazing. I wish I could have been like that at 16 years old. Wow. The problem here is how unhealthy and problematic their relationship is while being portrayed as something that's supposed to be cute and something we're supposed to root for. Tess in particular outs Claire without her permission to her mother. When Tess is mad about something that Claire was doing, Tess goes up to Claire's mom and is like, by the way, your daughter's gay, even though Claire has made it very clear that she does not feel comfortable coming out yet or attaching any kind of label to herself, and she's still figuring things out. Tess just like throws the whole thing up in the air and says, let me just tell your mom that you're into women without you being comfortable with that yet. And that's really not okay. And if Tess had learned from that and like the book had been like, this is really not okay, she really has to repent for this, like, no, we're still supposed to ship them. I did not ship anything in this book, except maybe I should ship this book back to Amazon for a return. Next up is the book Honesty by Seth King. This book, in terms of being a good book, I would say, you know, like 4 or 5 stars. This is a very well written book. This book is excellent. In terms of bisexual representation, this book gets a score of very bad. This book focuses on a relationship between 2 young adult men, about 19, 20 years old. Their names are Cole and Nick. Cole is completely gay and he's very comfortable in that. Nick is not comfortable in the fact that he's interested in other men and, you know, struggles to come out, struggles with his family, not wanting to accept that. Very reasonable, like totally, definitely a struggle that should be explored in books. The problem though is that, you know, throughout this book, Nick goes on many rants, and I thought this was going to lead to Nick being like, by the way, I'm bisexual. He never once says that, and it's never even addressed. Like that, the word is never even used. It's ridiculous. Nick goes on this rant where he's like, yeah, like I like you. I still like girls though. Like I've always liked women. I've had relationships with other women. I've always liked men too though. I don't understand why people are like, oh, you have to choose one thing or the other. Why can't I like both things? And I was like, yes, that's true. That's very true, Nick, except then, you know, towards the end, even as the book finishes, Cole's just like, it's a shame Nick was just never able to accept himself as a gay man. And that's like what we're supposed to take away from this, that Nick was just gay all along and couldn't accept it. And I was like, fuck that. Like, I was ready to throw this book at the wall for that alone. Like, I still would recommend this book because it's very well written, and Seth King is a very successful indie author who I'm very impressed with his career and what he's been able to do, and his writing is honestly absolutely beautiful. But that in the book just, like, made me really upset, so in terms of being a good book, it gets a good. In terms of being a book with bisexual representation, it gets a really bad. Going from really bad to just regular bad, we have Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. Now, this is not a diss against Becky Albertalli in any way, shape, or form. I think she is a fantastic writer. In fact, I loved Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, or Love, Simon. I thought that book was incredibly well written. And while in previous videos I've had some things to say about how I thought the ending was too predictable and that kind of thing, I really did enjoy the book, and I thought it was fantastically written. It kept me engaged from page 1 up until the very end. And that book did a great job showing, you know, a diversity of people from different races, different backgrounds, all different sexual orientations. I thought it was wonderful. Leah on the Offbeat, I thought was going to be more like that again, especially because this book is about, you know, the fact that Leah is bisexual and is not comfortable coming out to other people except for her mom, and how she is interested in this one girl who's in their friend group but is, you know, not really available for many reasons. The representation of Leah was done decently well for most of the book, but the girl, and I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but the girl that Leah gets in a relationship with, it doesn't make any sense in the context of Love, Simon. Like, if you read that book, it doesn't make any sense that this girl would end up with Leah. That, and the fact that when this girl finally does come out to Leah and is like, you know what, I think I'm not straight, I think that I like girls to an extent, Leah just completely invalidates her identity. It's so mean. She's basically just like, well, you know what, you need to make a decision. You can't just be in the one door and out the other. That's not even an expression. But she's just like, you need to make a decision. You can't just say, I'm like kind of bi or whatever. You have to either be bisexual or not. And it's like, Leah, come on, like, this girl's 18, she's still figuring shit out, like, and that would have been, again, like I said, it would have been fine if Leah learned from it, because Leah is an 18-year-old, she's a teenager, she's still in high school, she's gonna make immature, stupid mistakes, because we all make immature, stupid mistakes at that age. So if Leah had just been like, yeah, you know what, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have said that, I feel really, really bad about it, let's start over, here's how I learned from my mistake. If there had been any kind of emotional journey that Leah went through to realize why acting that way to this girl and making her cry over it, like, she just, like, bullied this girl until she cried, and at the end the girl is like, you know what, I shouldn't have said that, I will change my identity now, so yes, everything's good. No, Leah, that's setting such a bad example for teenagers. But if she had learned from it, that would have been setting a great example for teenagers, because you could have seen, like, the thought process of how someone could eventually learn to overcome that initial stigma that they had. But no, that's not what happened here. So I was disappointed in that sense. I still love Becky Albertalli. I think she's a fabulous writer. But this book had no plot, and because it had no plot, Leah learned nothing, and because Leah learned nothing, her problematic behavior just gets excused, and I'm not cool with that. Alright, we did worst, we did very bad, and we did bad. Now we will move into the category of not good. For not good, we have Autobiography by Christina Lauren. I am about to throw my YouTube career down the toilet here because everybody and their mom is in love with this book and talking about how great it is. Guys, I didn't feel it. Autobiography is the tale of an angsty teenager who has so much angst that he spends all semester writing a self-insert fanfiction about himself and the cute older guy that he has a crush on. And then he turns it in for a grade. Oh my god. When the main character, Tanner, is my age, that's gonna be one of the things that keeps him up at night. Like, when I can't sleep, I'm just like, oh my god, remember that time when I was in 8th grade and I got my period in math class and it just bled all over the seat? Looked like a murder scene, and I just got up and left it there. It's gonna be like that, but Tanner, for you, it will be so much worse. Because for you, it'll be like, remember the time I spent all semester writing a 60,000 word fan fiction about myself and a cute Mormon boy, and I turned it in for a grade? So this book actually inspired one of my recent Twitter rants. This book, to me, and again, I'm gonna have to come out here with a million disclaimers. I can see how somebody who views relationships and views romance and love in a very different way than I do, seeing this book very differently, so this could just be the way that I see relationships, and that doesn't mean that, like, the way I see relationships is the correct or the one way. You know, from my perspective, as a bisexual woman who married my male best friend, and who has a very healthy relationship with him, this book feels like it has a boner for drama. What I mean by that is that in reading this book, it is very painfully obvious that Tanner and his female best friend Autumn are a much healthier relationship. He should have ended up with Autumn. I was shipping him and Autumn the entire book. I was like, yes, Tanner, get with Autumn, get with Autumn. And then there's this part where you think they're gonna get together and then they don't. I hope that's not a spoiler. I don't think it is, because apparently, according to every Goodreads review I've read, everyone was like, no, Tanner and Autumn were never gonna end up together. That wasn't an option. I'm like, what do you mean it wasn't an option? They were clearly attracted to each other. It was talked about throughout the book. Like, she even mentioned she's in love with him at one point. He, like, regularly, like, hangs out in her bedroom with her, letting her sit on his lap with no pants on, and he talks about, like, God, she's so beautiful, she's so attractive, I'm attracted to her, like, all that stuff. So I'm like, it really seemed like they could have ended up together, just based on the way I see things. But then there was this whole thing, and I really, really hate when books do this, because I have noticed this as a trend in the new wave of books with bisexual male protagonists, which, let me be clear, there should be more books with bisexual male protagonists, because most of the bisexual men I know in my life are not open about it because they are afraid of the stigma that, like, a lot of people still won't accept that, and that's ridiculous. So there should be more books with that, yes. But there's this trope that's been happening where the man or the teenage boy or whatever will have a female best friend that he has a lot of chemistry with, and he will have this point when he's in a relationship with another man, and he will think to himself about his female best friend, like, man, I just wish I was capable of loving her in that way. To me, and again, this is where my perspective on relationships comes in, love is not a thing that just comes out of nowhere. Love, like, physical attraction, sure, you can feel attracted to another person, but if you want to be in love with them, that takes effort. You need to, you know, go on dates, get to know each other, do selfless acts of kindness for one another, put each other first. And if the relationship doesn't work because you're incompatible in some way, then you won't fall in love. But if you know, put that work in and it's worth it to you, that's what real love comes from. And again, I'm not the authority on real love, so if you're like, no, that's not what real love is to me, that's fine. Like, that's fine, read this book, maybe you'll like it a lot better than I did, but for me, that's what real love is. That's what it means for me and my husband. We have been best friends since we've been like 12 years old, and we put a lot of effort into making our relationship work, and like, we were attracted to each other when we were like 14, but were we in love yet? No, because we hadn't built that up yet. And that's a thing that you build up. And if I had like fallen in love with some girl and been like, I wish I could love Tyler that way, like, I can love him that way, and I do, because that's how our relationship works. What I think is happening here is like, Tanner is in love with Sebastian, but it comes across, at least in my opinion, when you're a teenager and your brain isn't fully developed yet, you fall in love with someone, and what you think is love is just the fact that your brain, like, has the same reaction to, like, fear and surprise and excitement and sexual attraction. Those are, like, all ignite similar parts of the brain. So often, like, there have been studies done where people will like do something scary and then see a person afterwards, and the results find that people are likely to rate the person they see afterwards as more attractive after they do something scary. So like, the fear of the unknown is actually what's very attractive to younger people who aren't used to like love yet. So Tanner's in love with Sebastian because Sebastian's someone he can't have. He's someone that it causes more drama for their community, the fact that he's like, oh, I will go after the Mormon bishop's son because it makes sense. It's harder. He's harder to get. You know, it's more of a challenge. There's more drama involved in this. And that's really how it came across to me. Meanwhile, he's got Autumn, who's like a very stable person who has always shown him love, and he has shown that he's both attracted to her and that he cares about her as a person. That seemed like a much healthier relationship, in my opinion. And the reason that this book, I think, gets not good in terms of bisexual representation is because with Autumn, Tanner's like, I'm just not capable of loving her that way, which is the kind of rhetoric that I see in books where the man is gay often, that he's only interested in other men, and he says, I wish I could love this woman that way, that would make my life easier. So it feels almost like the author like originally wrote a book with a gay protagonist and then was like, oh, we could have an additional diversity marketing angle if we made him bi instead. And he goes through nothing specific to being bisexual. He's like essentially just like they just labeled him differently. That's how it felt to me. That's how it felt to me. That might not be how it felt to you. And that's why I'm coming at this with disclaimers, because like everyone experiences these things differently. But it made me pretty upset reading this, and it just seemed like this book wasn't promoting what a healthy relationship looks like. And it almost feels like some authors might feel trapped that if you want to have like an LGBT novel, that you can't have a male and female couple end up together at the end, which you can. And I very rarely, and if you guys have any recommendations for me, drop them in the comments below, please, because it feels like, you know, a lot of bisexual people end up with somebody who's a different gender than them. That's what happens a lot of the time. And the reason for that is just that, like, your dating pool is larger. Like, a lot more men are into me than women that are into me, just because there are a lot more men out there that like women than women who like other women, just statistically. So it was statistically more likely that I end up with a man, and I did. It seems like a lot of books and movies and media don't, like, they're like, oh, this is an LGBT romance and we want to market it that way, therefore the bisexual character cannot end up, like, this man cannot end up with a woman at the end, or else it's a straight romance, which shows that, like, everything's still kind of in boxes. And let me be real, I've written books with bisexual women in them, and they often end up with other women, so I'm just as guilty of that as everyone else. So maybe I will have to kind of, like, write something new that, like, if I have a problem with books and I'm a writer, it's kind of my job to fix it. So I'll write a book where the bisexual protagonist falls in love with their different gender best friend. I guess that's what I'm gonna do now. Thanks for the inspiration, Autobiography. Beyond that, though, I just had a lot of problems with this book. Mainly that, like, the premise of it is that Tanner is entering a class where you have to write, you know, a full novel in a semester, which is awesome because I was writing a novel in one class at the same time as I read this book, so I was like, this is awesome, I'm going to relate to this so hard. But the writing aspect is almost never mentioned, other than that, like, you see him working on the book here and there and clearly inserting himself into a fan fiction about him and Sebastian, which is cringy as hell. Autumn is apparently the character who loves to write, and she's the one who, like, gets into Yale for writing, and she's the one who's passionate about this class, but we never once even find out what her book's about, that she's spending all semester devoted to. We never see anything about her book. She never talks about writing. All we know is that she's hopelessly in love with Tanner, who's not capable of loving her back, which, whatever the fuck that means. There were just things that were off about this. Moving from not good to neutral, we have Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. Now, you guys may recognize this as one of my favorite books of all time. Yes, this book was a 5-star book for me, so this is not a reflection on the book at all. I absolutely love this book. However, while the book gets rated a 5 stars, in terms of bisexual representation, this book gets rated a neutral. The reason it gets rated a neutral is that we have a main character, a protagonist, who is clearly bisexual in this. We have Simon, who is dating Agatha at the beginning, who's a woman. You know, he really seems to be very interested in her. He really likes her a lot. She breaks up with him. He's very sad about it. Later, he ends up dating Baz, who's a guy. And the whole time Simon's like, man, I thought I only liked girls before, but turns out I like this guy now. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Literally no one's ever like, well, maybe you're bi. Literally no one ever says that to him. Baz is just like, how is Simon still not figured out he's gay yet? And I'm like, well, that's kind of rude because, like, he liked girls until now, so maybe there's a reason. Like, I don't know. So that's kind of what I was thinking throughout this book. I was like, how is there not, like, one single character who could have been like, hey, you know, it's totally okay if you're interested in more than one gender. Like, that's not a problem. That's totally fine. There's, you know, words to describe that. I just don't know why, and no one ever brought that up throughout this whole book. I am incredibly excited to read the sequel, and I'm hoping this gets addressed in the sequel. I don't know if it will or not. I'm excited to read it either way, but I'm really hoping that that gets addressed at some point, because throughout this I was like, why? Moving from neutral to good, we have Red, White, and Royal Blue. So this book did a good job. The main character, Alex, you know, defines himself as bisexual when he realizes he's interested in Henry because he was interested in women before, but then realizes, you know, I have felt attracted to men before in the past. This kind of makes sense. I'm not into just one gender. Great. I'm happy for Alex, and I was really happy with the way that the coming out was handled and all of that. Characters were supportive of each other, but it still kind of showed the struggles. The one pet peeve I had with it was, you know, it did kind of a similar thing with Autobiography, where Alex has his best friend Nora, and the two of them dated in the past, and he's like, I just wish I was capable of loving her that way. And I'm like, I don't know what this whole thing is with being capable of loving someone. But he's like, but my heart just belongs to Henry. Maybe this is why I should not be reading anything romantic. I think I just might not be a romantic enough person for this. And I always thought I was. But I think it's ridiculous that, like, your heart belongs to one person. Like, no, your heart belongs to whoever you put in the effort to make a strong relationship with. That's who your heart belongs to. And it's not like there's only one person. There's like one true person out there for you in the world, and everybody else is just not it. Like, I don't think that's how love works, and I think that that's like not a good thing to be perpetuating, because that leads people to stay in relationships that might not be healthy because they're like, no, this is the one person my heart belongs to, when in reality there are multiple people out there that can work together in relationships. However, this book is getting a rating of good in terms of bisexual representation, because it has a whole diverse range of people of all different types of sexual orientations and identities in this book, and I think it did a fabulous job of that. So good job, Red, White, and Royal Blue. Moving from good to very good is Running with Lions by Julian Winters, the story of the world's most bisexual soccer team of all time. Oh man, yeah, this book basically, it had great representation. I don't have too much to delve in deeply with this book because it did a good job. I don't have anything to criticize. The main character is like, yeah, I'm bi, he's comfortable with that. His best friend is someone who will just kind of have sex with anyone, so he's like he could have easily been like the slutty bisexual stereotype, but it didn't really go into that because like the main character wasn't like that. The main character in this is Sebastian. I feel like there's so many Simons and Sebastians in LGBT novels. Am I wrong about that? Like, Simons and Sebastians, it's just like, I'm gonna write a book called Simon and Sebastian. Will they fall in love? No, they'll both end up with their female best friend. Anyway, this book is great. Highly recommended. Also, Julian Winters is a super nice guy. I slid into his DMs one day on Twitter, and he was really helpful and nice with me, so yeah, read this book. Moving from very good to great is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This book involves two characters, Nick and Charlie. Nick is also a common name in the LGBT novel, but I guess Nick's just a common name in general. Anyway, so Nick and Charlie, they have a relationship with each other. Their relationship is just ridiculously cute. Also, there's a dog in this book that, like, I want to start a fan club for this dog. Nelly for President 2020, okay? I love this dog. But Nick has some difficulty figuring out his identity, and I don't remember how much of this is from this book versus, like, I continued to read the webcomic after I finished this book. But, like, the fact that Nick does identify as bisexual when he's liked women in the past and likes Charlie now and realizes that he can like multiple genders and that's totally fine. What this book did as well was that it showed kind of the struggles of identifying not as, like, fully gay or fully straight, where, like, you know, Nick wants to come out, but, like, some people are like, no, you're probably just gay and in denial about it. He's like, no, I'm not. Like, this book actually kind of goes into that, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that it's kind of advocating in that sense. So, good job, Heartstopper. I recommend this book. Moving on to Excellent, we have An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I just did a review of this book, so I will show you that in the cards. But this book, I thought really, really delved into it, especially with April struggling to, like, have people be willing to publicly accept her that way. We see that a lot in, like, TV and people who are, you know, on TV and in movies and stuff. A lot of them, like, we want to typecast them as, like, this character's straight, this character's gay, and, like, April's agent is basically like, okay, well, if you're dating a woman right now, we have to, like, say you're a lesbian, because if you are like, I'm bisexual, people are just gonna think that you're, like, slutty or, like, you know, trying to over-sexualize yourself. And April eventually does take a stand against that at a very inopportune moment, and the scene, like, kind of, like, shook me. Now, I feel like such a zoomer being like, shook me, but it did. Like, I really related to a lot of this, and Hank Green is a man. I don't know how he wrote a bisexual woman so well, but he gives me hope that I can write in whatever perspective I want to, and it'll be okay, because he captured it, man. Good work. And moving from excellent to amazing finally is Star-Crossed. This book is QAF. Oh my god. I'm not even going to say the F word because this book is too wholesome for that, okay? This is a middle grade novel. It is targeted at kids, like people in like 4th through 8th grade would be reading this book. This is not for adults, this is for kids. And that is why I like this book so much, because there is nothing sexual in this book. Nothing is even remotely sexualized. It is this girl who's in a school play, and she eventually has to play Romeo because the guy who was playing Romeo dropped out, and she like ended up being the understudy. So she's playing Romeo, and she has a crush on the girl who plays Juliet, even though in the past she only liked guys, and now she's kind of realizing, well, what's this? I don't understand. And it's so cute. There's nothing sexual. It's just her figuring it out and trying to navigate what that could mean for her. And is it okay to like both and not be fully gay, even though she can still like guys, but she likes this girl right now, and the girl's Juliet. And there's a lot of fun Shakespeare references in this too, and I feel like anyone who is a theater kid in middle school will read this and be like, ah! You'll melt reading this book. Oh my god, this book is the highest recommendation I have. I read this during Pride Month last year, and I couldn't get over how happy I was reading this. I'm just joyful right now. Read Star-Crossed. Alright, so those were my books. I know I ranted a little bit at the beginning. Again, just because, I ranted about a book and said its representation wasn't very good, that doesn't mean I'm not recommending it. Except for Ship It. I don't recommend Ship It one bit. Do not read Ship It. You could if you want. Read it if you want to make a rant review like I did. That's kind of fun. But most of these books I would recommend reading because they were interesting to read and they were fun and I had a great time. Now, on to books I didn't include on this list. One would be the book Noah Can't Even. I really liked that book a lot. There was Noah's this character who is he is interested in this girl Sophie, and then also is interested in his friend Harry. It doesn't go into what Noah's sexual orientation is, and I'm not gonna judge it because I haven't read the sequel yet. So the sequel and the third book I think are both out right now, so I need to read those before I can make any kind of judgment on that. That wouldn't be fair of me. Other book I didn't include was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. Reason I didn't include this book was that I forgot to pull it off the shelf when I set up my camera. So my apologies. I thought it was a good book. The other book that I didn't include on this list was Sculpt Yourself, because I wrote that book, and as me being the person who wrote it, I cannot accurately judge how that book has affected other people. So let me know in the comments below what you thought of Sculpt Yourself if you read it. If you didn't read it, we've still got time left in Pride Month for you to pick up the ebook, which is $2.99, or the audiobook, which you can use your Audible credit on. So just plug in my own book real quick, and you can make a rant review about it if you want. If you think the representation was shit, you can be like, why doesn't Kelly fall in love with her opposite gender best friend? She does. They break up because they had to move. I hope that wasn't a spoiler for my own book I just gave. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great rest of Pride Month. I will see you guys again soon, but in the meantime, please don't forget to support small businesses, okay? Happy reading!